Wait, before you scroll through this video, let me tell you something that may upset you. If success were fair, Tom Wilson wouldn't exist. Every year in America, millions of kids play baseball. Most of them believe they are special. Tom Wilson was not one of them. Tom was painfully normal. Not future star normal. More like supporting character at a family barbecue normal. He grew up in a classic American family. His father worked too much. His mother said, "Everything happens for a reason." And Tom? Tom was the kid people described as cute, which in America means we don't expect much from him. At age 10, Tom joined his first baseball team. The coach looked at him and said, "Okay, whose boy is this?" Not as a joke, it was a question. Tom was slow, uncoordinated, and he swung the bat like it owed him money. Strike, strike, strike. The parents applauded anyway, which is much worse than booing. But here's the funny thing. Tom didn't dream of fame. He didn't dream of trophies. He just hated losing. It was as if he was emotionally allergic to it. He was the kind of kid who would replay his mistakes in his head at 2:47 a.m., while everyone else slept peacefully, like responsible people. By middle school, it became clear. Other children had talent. Tom had diligence. And hard work, as everyone knows, is what people praise you for right before they kick you off the team. One coach told him, "You're not cut out for this." Tom went home, stared at the ceiling and thought, "Okay, what if I make myself?" A terrible idea. But it worked anyway. Instead of trying to be better than everyone else, Tom tried to be better than yesterday. While the kids practiced for 2 hours, Tom trained for 4, poorly at first. While others relied on instinct, Tom relied on notes, diagrams, and charts. He treated baseball like math, and baseball hates math, until it stops hating it. Let's fast forward. The boy, whom no one expected anything from, started doing something that looked illegal. He kept winning. Not spectacularly, not viral, just constantly annoying. The kind of player that opponents hate because there is no obvious reason why he beats you. And when Tom finally reached the top, when he could have relaxed, he did something crazy. He left. Not because he was defeated, but because he realized something dangerous. Winning games is cool, but building a system is better. So he created his own baseball team. Different rules, a different culture, different results. People laughed. Then they copied him. This is not a story about how to become the best. This is a story about being too stubborn to disappear. If you've ever felt average, invisible, or been on the verge of giving up, this story is for you. Because Tom Wilson didn't win the lottery. He defied all odds. Part 1. The boy no one expected anything from. Tom Wilson wasn't born into poverty, nor in luxury. He was born into expected normality, the quietest place where dreams can die. A typical American home, a lawn mowed every Saturday, a garage with a car his father didn't like, and a TV that played louder than the family conversations. His father worked a lot, not because he wanted to, but because it was the right thing to do. His mother believed in fate, and she often repeated a phrase that sounds beautiful but doesn't solve anything. Everything will work out somehow. In this house, they didn't talk about big goals. They talked about stability. And Tom grew up feeling that no one expected him to fail. But neither was he expected to succeed. When Tom was 7, he got his first baseball uniform. It was 2 sizes too big. For growth, his father said. Tom didn't know yet that most of his life would be just like that. for growth. At his first practice, he stood in line with the other children and tried to look confident. But baseball doesn't lie. The first pitch was a miss. The second was too late. The third, he didn't even understand what had happened. Strike! The children laughed. The coach sighed. And Tom felt ashamed for the first time that didn't go away in a minute. After the game, the parents applauded. Not because he played well, but because they felt sorry for him. Someone said, "The main thing is to participate." And Tom realized that this was the worst thing he could hear, because participation is when they don't believe in you, but they want to be polite. That night, Tom stared at the ceiling for a long time and didn't think about defeat. He thought about one thing. What if I stay this way? A few days later, his father saw Tom in the garage. The boy was throwing a ball at the metal door, again and again, without music, without spectators, without hope of praise. His father asked, "Why are you doing this?" Tom replied quietly, "Because I don't want to be bad." It wasn't ambition. It was an escape from shame. And my father said nothing. But the next day, an old net appeared in the garage, without words. It was his way of showing love. At the age of 9, Tom wrote one sentence in his notebook. "I won't be the most talented, but I will be the most prepared." He didn't know yet that this phrase would ruin his life. Because when you think that way, there is no turning back. While the other children played, Tom was training. While others dreamed, he analyzed. He wasn't teased maliciously. They simply ignored him. And that hurts even more. But it was in this silence was born a thing that cannot be taught. Inner resilience. Part 2. When they don't hate you, they just don't take you. At school, baseball ceases to be a game. It no longer matters whether you try hard, whether your parents like you, whether you smile nicely after a defeat. Only one thing matters here: the result. And in this world, Tom Wilson was awkward. He wasn't the worst, but he wasn't good enough to be counted on. And that's the worst place to be. In 7th grade, Tom made the school team. Formally, yes. In reality, no. He sat on the bench, always ready, always in uniform, always last. The coach called on others, even those who played worse, even those who were late. No one hated Tom. He was ignored. And with each game, he began to understand. They don't play fairly here. Here, they play for faith. And they didn't believe in him. His name was Coach Reynolds. He didn't yell. He didn't motivate. He didn't explain. He just watched and weeded out. At the very first training session, he approached Tom and said a phrase that became a turning point. "You don't look like a baseball player." Not, "You play badly." Not, "You need to practice more." Namely, "You don't look like it." And Tom realized something terrible. Here, they don't judge you for your work, but by your image. Once, before an important match, Tom approached the coach and asked, "What do I need to do to be in the starting lineup?" The coach didn't even look at him. He replied, "Honestly, change yourself." That wasn't motivating. It was a sentence. Tom didn't sleep that night. He didn't train. He didn't plan. He was angry. Not at the coach, not at the team, at himself. Tom's anger was quiet. He didn't break things. He didn't argue. He didn't quit the team. He simply decided, if they don't see me, I'll become inconvenient. He started writing everything down. Who quits? Who makes mistakes and when? Which serves break the game? While the others played, he learned to read the game, and that was dangerous. During one training session, the coach fell ill. He was replaced by his assistant, less biased, less blind. He let Tom play for a few innings, without expectations, without pressure. And Tom played, not perfectly, but smart. He didn't try to be a hero. He didn't take any risks. He just didn't make mistakes. After the game, the assistant said, "You play strangely, but effectively." It was the first time Tom had been described with a word other than normal. That night, Tom wrote a new rule in his notebook. I don't have to be liked. I have to work. And at that moment, his childhood ended for good. Because when you stop seeking approval, you become dangerous. Part 3. When you almost became who you wanted to be, and almost ruined everything. A chance that seemed accidental. No one announced it as an event. There was no dramatic music. There were no speeches. Just one day, Tom Wilson was in the starting lineup. Not because they believed in him. It was because there was no other choice. The main player was injured. The substitute was late. And the coach sighed and said, "Wilson, you're in." Tom nodded, calmly, as if it were a normal thing to do. Inside, everything was screaming. The game where he refused to be the hero. Tom took the field with no desire to prove anything to anyone. He didn't try to impress. He didn't take any risks. He played as if he knew something that others did not. He didn't hit hard. He hit at the right moment. He didn't run faster. He ran smarter. The team won, quietly, no fanfare. And that scared the coach more than the defeat. After the game, they approached him. First his classmates, then the coaches, then a local scout. For the first time, someone said, "You have potential." And Tom believed it. A little. Just enough to let his guard down. He began to change. He trained more, but not as diligently. He listened to advice, but selectively. Somewhere deep down, he began to want not results, but recognition. And that is the most dangerous point. It was a big match. Full stands, scouts, noise. Tom decided today he would be brilliant. He took a risk. He did something unnecessary. He broke his own rules. And he lost. Not the team. He did. After the game, the coach said coldly, "That's not your game." And this time, Tom couldn't argue. Silence after the fall. He was benched again. But now it was worse. Because he had already tasted success, and now he knew how easy it was to lose it. He sat there, looking at the field, and thought for the first time, maybe they were right. It was the most dangerous thought of all. A decision that doesn't seem heroic. Tom didn't give up, but he didn't rush to prove it. He did something less noticeable. He went back to basics, to his notebook, to analysis, to silence. And he wrote down, "If I don't play myself, I lose, even if I win the match." It wasn't a breakthrough. It was growing up. Part 4. When a dream ceases to be a dream and becomes work. 1. A world where everyone is strong. The transition to the big leagues did not look like a triumph. There were no fireworks. There was no applause. There was a contract. Short. Cautious. In this world, Tom Wilson was no longer a guy without talent, but he wasn't a star either. Everyone here was strong, fast, smart, and worst of all, confident. People don't get acquainted in the locker room. Here they see who is weaker, who takes longer to tie their shoelaces, who is nervous, who is silent. Tom was silent, and that worked against him. He heard behind him, "He won't last long." And it didn't sound like an insult. It sounded like a prediction. Everyone is wrong here, but here they count. Every blow, every step, every pause. Tom played consistently, not brilliantly, and consistency is not what sells. The coaches wanted spectacle. Managers wanted numbers. Fans wanted heroes. And Tom was effective. The loneliness that no one talks about. He lived in hotels. He ate alone. He trained in silence. He was close to his dream, but far from home. Sometimes he called his mother. She would say, "We are so proud of you." And Tom didn't know what to say, because he didn't know yet if it was true. The first big test. One day he was given a chance. A game against a strong opponent. Full stands, television. And Tom played well. Not perfectly, but without mistakes. After the game, the manager said, "You're reliable." It was a compliment, and at the same time, a verdict. The moment when he almost broke down. A few weeks later, his playing time was reduced. No explanation, without discussion, just numbers on a sheet. Tom sat in his hotel room and stared at his suitcase. He could assemble it in 10 minutes. And at that moment he thought, what if that's all there is? A choice that few make. Tom didn't go to the bar. He didn't look for excuses. He opened his laptop. He began to analyze not the game, but the system. Who gets the chances? For what? Why? And he realized something dangerous. It's not the best players who win here. Here, those who fit in win. And then he had an idea that would change everything. Part 5. When you are no longer needed. 1. A call without emotion. It happened in the morning. Not after a bad game. Not after a mistake. Not after a scandal. Just a regular call. "Tom, we're going in a different direction." That was the whole conversation. No explanations, no thanks, no good luck. Tom said thank you. He turned off his phone and sat there for another minute without blinking. The room where it gets quiet. The hotel room suddenly became larger. The suitcase stood in the middle of the room. Now it was no longer hypothetical. Tom looked at the uniform, at the bat, at the gloves, and for the first time in many years, he didn't know what to do next. The shame of returning. He returned home silently. Airport. The car. The same house. The lawn was mowed. The garage was closed. It seemed as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. His mother hugged him longer than usual. His father said, "The main thing is that you tried." And Tom understood. They thought it was over. Months without a name. He was no longer a player. He was a guy who used to play. He coached children. He worked temporarily. He avoided questions. And every time someone said, "You're still young, you have your whole life ahead of you," he wanted to scream. Because he was already there. And he was kicked out. Rock bottom is not a scream. The worst thing is not depression. The worst thing is indifference. The days blurred together. Training became mechanical. And one morning, Tom didn't go to the field. He just sat in the garage and stared at the old net. The same one. From childhood. And he asked himself, if the system doesn't want me, what if I create my own? The idea seemed ridiculous. He started writing. Not a motivational text, a plan. A team without stars, without egos, no show. A team where work is valued, discipline, decisions. Where it's not the loudest who win. It sounded utopian. That's why it wouldn't let him go. The first terrible decision, Tom sold his car. Not an expensive one, but it was his. He invested the money in renting a field, in uniforms, in people. Without guarantees, without investors. And for the first time in a long time, he felt not fear, but control. Part 6. When you stop asking for permission. When Tom Wilson said out loud that he wanted to start his own baseball team, people didn't laugh. They did worse. They sympathized. It's expensive. It's risky. It's not for someone like you. Tom had heard this his whole life. And for the first time, those words didn't upset him. They confirmed that he was on the right track. The team that no one wanted. He wasn't looking for stars. He was looking for those who had already been written off. Players without contracts, without hype, without illusions. Those who knew how painful it is to be unwanted. The first team looked strange. Different ages, different styles, no franchise face. A perfect failure. On paper. Tom introduced simple but strict rules. No one is bigger than the system. Mistakes are analyzed, not hidden. It's not the loudest who plays, but the most useful. There was no shouting. There were no motivational speeches. There was structure. And players who had lived in chaos for years suddenly began to play better. No one broadcast the first games. In the stands sat several friends and one man with coffee who was just hiding from the rain. But the team was winning. No show, no star moments. They won because they didn't do anything stupid. Their opponents didn't understand how they were losing. And Tom just looked and smiled silently. When the first serious victories came, people from the big leagues showed up. The same faces, the same suits, the same words. We are interested. You have potential. Let's talk. Tom listened. And for the first time in his life, he didn't want to go back there. Because now he had something what he had never had before. The right to choose. The greatest victory was not the end. It was the moment when one of his players signed a contract to play in the major leagues. Not because of hype, not because of connections, but because of stability. And then Tom realized he hadn't created a team. He had created a path. One evening, Tom was standing in the garage again. The old net was still there. The walls were scratched. Silence. He did not become a legend. He didn't become the face of advertising. But he did more. He proved that the system is not a wall. It's just something that someone came up with before you, and that it can be rewritten. If you listen to this story and feel like you're being ignored, maybe you are not the problem. Maybe you're just playing in the wrong system. Tom Wilson didn't win the game. He created his own. 10 years later, Tom Wilson woke up early. Not because he had to, but because he was used to it. The sun rose over the field which he had once rented with his last money, and now it was called a development base. Tom no longer played. His knees reminded him that time was not on his side. He stood on the sidelines, with coffee, with a notebook, and watched as the young players made the same mistakes he once made. And he didn't rush to correct them, because some lessons only work when they hurt. Question. His last name was not on the form. It was a matter of principle. The team existed around him. It existed after him. Dozens of players went through this system. Some became professionals. Some became coaches. Some simply learned discipline and carried it into their adult lives. And Tom considered that a success. One day he got a call from the same league that once said, "We're going in a different direction." Now they were asking, "How did you do it?" Tom smiled and answered honestly, "I stopped asking for permission." He sometimes visited his parents' house. The lawn was a little worse. The garage was older. The net was still hanging. Tom touched it and remembered the boy who threw a ball at the metal door because he was afraid of being bad. And he thought, "You weren't weak. You just didn't know yet who you would become." He never became a legend. He didn't have a statue. He didn't have a movie. But he created an environment where normal people became strong. And that was harder than scoring the decisive goal. If anyone is listening to this story now and thinks that something is wrong with them, maybe you're fine. Maybe you were just born into the wrong system. And maybe your path is not to win at someone else's game, but to create your own.